Command, this is forward post. Enemy in from East Ridge. Request any air and artillery support. Over.
What if the man beaten and humiliated every night by his own fellow prisoners, punished for refusing to betray them, was the same man who stood up the next morning and risked instant execution to save every single one of their lives? In late January 1945, Germany, Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds of the 106th Infantry Division endured nightly beatings from some of the 75 to 80 American posts he led. The men captured during the Battle of the Bulge were cold, hungry, and desperate. Frustration boiled over. They blamed Edmonds for their capture, for strict discipline, for not escaping sooner. Fists landed in the dark barracks. Boots kicked ribs. Insults flew. Edmonds never fought back, never reported them, never broke. He absorbed the blows in silence, believing leadership meant protecting them even from themselves. Then came the morning order. The camp commandant announced that all Jewish American prisoners must step forward for special handling. Everyone knew what that meant: transferred to death camps, or worse. Edmonds, a devout Christian from Tennessee, had only about 30 to 40 Jewish men in his group. But when the time came, he marched all 75 to 80 Americans outside and lined them up. The commandant demanded the Jews identify themselves. Edmonds refused. A pistol was pressed to his head. The German shouted he would shoot if Edmonds did not comply. Edmonds looked him in the eye and said, "We are all Jews here." He repeated it calmly, refusing to single out any man. The commandant hesitated, then backed down. No one stepped forward. No one was taken. This moment stands as one of the war's purest acts of moral courage. Edmonds, beaten by his own men the night before, chose to risk death to protect every soldier under his command, Jewish or no. He invoked the Geneva Convention, insisting all POUs must be treated equally. The commandant relented. The segregation order was not enforced that day. All 75 to 80 men survived captivity and returned home after liberation in April 1945. The shock lies in the contrast: a leader abused by his unit, yet willing to die for every one of them. Edmonds never sought recognition. He spoke little of it. His son Chris learned the full story decades later from survivors. In 2015, Roddy Edmonds received the Medal of Honor, posthumously the first American soldier of World War II, honored for saving fellow POUs from the Holocaust. The incident occurred in Stalakixa, a POW camp near Ziegenhain, Germany, during the final months of World War II in Europe. Edmonds and his men Company B, 422nd Infantry Regiment, 106th Infantry Division were captured December 19, 1944. During the Battle of the Bulge, the 106th, newly arrived and thinly spread, was overrun in the German Ardennes offensive. Thousands surrendered. Edmonds' group marched to Germany under brutal winter conditions, starving, frostbitten, beaten by guards. Stalakixa held American enlisted men in barracks of wood and brick, surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. Conditions were harsh, meager rations, often watery soup and bread, freezing winters, disease, and forced labor. Guards enforced discipline with beatings. Morale among POWs sometimes fractured under strain. Some men turned anger inward, blaming leaders for the capture. Edmonds, a 32-year-old master sergeant from Knoxville, Tennessee, was the senior NCO of his group. He maintained order, insisting on hygiene, sharing food, keeping discipline despite beatings from guards, and, at times, resentment from his own men. Some blamed him for strict rules or for not attempting escape. Nightly beatings in the barracks were punishment for perceived failures. Edmonds never retaliated or reported them. In late January 1945, the camp come undone following orders from higher SS or Wehrmacht authorities announced that all Jewish posts must step forward the next morning for special handling. By 1945, the Holocaust was in full operation. Jewish posts faced transfer to concentration camps or execution. Edmonds, aware of only about 30 to 40 Jewish men in his group, understood the danger. The event mattered profoundly. It was one of the few documented cases of an American POW leader risking death to protect Jewish comrades from Nazi selection. Edmonds invoked the Geneva Convention 1929, which required equal treatment of posts regardless of religion or ethnicity and prohibited discrimination. His refusal to comply by his entire group lining up forced the commandant to back down. No Jewish men were segregated that day. The order was not enforced for his barracks. All 75 to 80 men survived captivity. The camp was liberated by U.S. forces in late March-April 1945. Edmonds returned home, rarely spoke of the incident, and died in 1985. His son Chris, researching decades later, uncovered survivor testimonies and documents. In 2015, Rhodey Edmonds was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first U.S. soldier of World War II, honored for saving fellow posts from the Holocaust. Yad Vashem recognized him as righteous. Among the nations, the act highlighted moral leadership under extreme duress, enduring abuse from his own men, yet refusing to betray any of them when life or death stakes arrived. December 19, 1944, early morning near Schonberg, Belgium. Master Sergeant Rhodey Edmonds and the remnants of Company B, 422nd Infantry Regiment, 106th Infantry Division, surrendered after the German Ardennes offensive overran their positions. Surrounded, low on ammunition, freezing in snow, they laid down arms. German troops marched them hundreds of Americans eastward under guard. Edmonds, 32, from Knoxville, Tennessee, kept his men in order. Stay together. Share what little food remained. No straggling. The column trudged through bitter cold. Some fell, were shot or left behind. January 1945, Stalag near Ziegenhain, Germany. The camp held thousands of American enlisted posts in wooden barracks surrounded by barbed wire and towers. Edmonds, as senior NCO of his group, about 75 to 80 men from Company B, maintained discipline, hygiene details, food sharing, morale talks. Conditions were grim, watery soup, thin bread, freezing winters, lice, dysentery. Guards beat men for minor infractions. Some posts turned to anger inward. Nightly, in the dark barracks, frustration boiled over. Some men blamed Edmonds for the surrender, for strict rules, for not attempting escape. Fists landed punches to ribs, kicks when he slept. Insults flew. Coward, failure, traitor. Edmonds never fought back, never reported them to guards or officers. He absorbed the blows in silence, believing leadership meant protecting them even from their own despair. Bruises bloomed under his uniform. Ribs ached, but he rose each morning. Organized roll call. Kept the group intact. Late January 1945. The camp commandant, following orders from higher SS or Wehrmacht authority, announced over loudspeakers, all Jewish American prisoners must step forward the next morning for special handling. Everyone understood transfer to concentration camps, forced labor, or execution. Edmonds, a devout Christian, knew only about 30 to 40 Jewish men in his group. He gathered his men quietly that night, spoke low. Tomorrow, we all line up together. No one steps out. We are all the same. Some protested fear, survival instinct, but Edmonds held firm. If they take one, they take us all. Next morning, January 1945. Exact day varies in accounts. Late January, the commandant ordered Jewish posts to step forward. Edmonds marched his entire group, 75 to 80 men, outside and lined them up in formation. The German officer demanded, "Identify the Jews." Edmonds refused. The commandant drew his pistol, pressed it to Edmonds' head. "You will point them out, or I shoot you." Edmonds looked straight ahead. "We are all Jews here." The officer shouted again. Edmonds repeated calmly, "We are all the same religion here." He invoked the Geneva Convention. Posts must be treated equally. No discrimination by race or religion. Tension gripped the yard. Guards raised rifles. Posts stood rigid. The commandant hesitated. Shooting one might spark revolt or international repercussions. He backed down, holstered the pistol, and walked away. No one was segregated that day. The order was not enforced for Edmonds' group. Heroics lay in quiet resolve, enduring nightly beatings from his own men, yet refusing to betray any Jewish or Notwen. La Death arrived. No violence from Edmonds, only words and stance. Losses, none that day. All 75 to 80 survived captivity. The camp liberated by U.S. forces in late March-April 1945. Men returned home. Edmonds spoke little of it. Post-technology, weapons. None used. No guns, no explosives, only moral authority, Geneva Convention knowledge, and unyielding leadership. The incident remained private until decades later survivors spoke to Edmonds' son, Chris. In 2015, Brody Edmonds received the Medal of Honor posthumously, the first U.S. soldier of World War II, honored for saving fellow Poles from the Holocaust. Arrived on a freezing morning in late January 1945, inside the barbed wire perimeter of Stalachixa, near Ziegenhain, Germany. The camp commandant's voice had crackled over the loudspeakers. The previous evening, all Jewish American prisoners were to step forward at roll call the next morning for special handling. The words hung heavy in the barracks. Everyone understood the implication. Segregation meant transfer to concentration camps, forced labor under SS control, or worse. Roddy Edmonds, Master Sergeant and Senior NCO of his group of approximately 7580 American POWs, had spent the night speaking quietly to his men. Some were angry, some terrified. He told them simply, "Tomorrow, we all line up together. No one steps out alone. We stand as one." Dawn broke gray and bitter. The posts shuffled outside in formation, breath clouding in the cold. The commandant, flanked by armed guards, stood at the head of the yard. He barked the order. Jewish prisoners stepped forward now. Silence fell. Then, Edmonds marched his entire group of reman from Company B and attached stragglers forward as one block. All 75 to 80 Americans stood shoulder to shoulder. The commandant's face darkened. He strode up to Edmonds. pistol drawn, and pressed the muzzle against the sergeant's forehead. "You will identify the Jews, or I shoot you right here," he snarled in accented English. Edmonds did not flinch. He looked straight into the German officer's eyes and spoke calmly, clearly. "We are all Jews here." The commandant shouted again, demanding compliance. Edmonds repeated, voice steady. "We are all the same religion here," he added, invoking the Geneva Convention he had memorized. The convention requires that all prisoners be treated equally, regardless of race or religion. You cannot force us to identify anyone. Guards raised rifles. Tension crackled through the yard. The other posts stood rigid, silent, refusing to break ranks. Some trembled, but no one stepped forward. Seconds stretched into eternity. The commandant's finger tightened on the trigger. Then something shifted. Perhaps the mention of the Geneva Convention. Perhaps the sight of an entire group united. Perhaps the realization that shooting one man might ignite chaos or draw international scrutiny. The officer lowered the pistol, holstered it, and turned away without another word. He waved the guards back. The order was not enforced. No Jewish POW was segregated that morning. The men were marched back to barracks. Resolution came quietly. The group returned to the cold wooden building. The threat lifted for that day. Edmonds never spoke of the pistol to his head. He resumed daily routines, organizing food distribution, hygiene details, keeping morale from collapsing. The beatings from his own men continued some nights. Frustration still simmered, but no one blamed him for the stand. Word spread through the camp. Other groups took note. The commandant did not repeat the segregation demand for Edmonds barracks. All 75 to 80 men survived captivity. The camp was liberated by advancing U.S. forces in late March-April 1945. Prisoners walked out alive. Many returned home to families who had feared them dead. Edmonds rarely spoke of the incident after the war. He returned to Tennessee, worked quietly, raised a family, and died in 1985. His son Chris learned the full story years later from survivors who contacted him. Testimonies confirmed Edmonds' refusal to yield had saved every Jewish man in the group and, by extension, the entire unit from potential reprisal. In 2015, Roddy Edmonds was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first American soldier of World War II, honored for protecting fellow posts from the Holocaust. Yad Vashem recognized him as righteous among the nations. The lesson emerged with stark clarity. Moral courage can prevail even when physical power is absent. Edmonds had no weapon, no backup, only words, conviction, and the unity he had forged with his men despite their earlier resentment. By standing firm, invoking international law, and refusing to betray any individual, he forced the oppressor to back down. Leadership, he showed, is not about rank or force. It is about protecting those under your care, even at personal cost. He endured beatings from his own unit, yet chose to risk death for every one of them, Jewish or not. When the moment came, no battle was fought that morning. No shots rang out. Victory arrived through quiet defiance and collective resolve. The commandant relented. The men lived. All survived to see liberation. Edmonds' stand reminded that in the darkest places, cold barracks, under a pistol's muzzle, humanity can still triumph. When one person refuses to yield, it was not a victory of arms, but of conscience, one that saved 75 to 80 lives and left a legacy of moral strength in the face of evil. Reflecting on that frozen morning in late January 1945, inside Stalagny, Roddy Edmonds' stand reveals the deepest kind of courage, the kind that endures abuse from those it protects, yet refuses to abandon any of them when death stands at the door. Beaten nightly by some of his own men, fists in the dark, kicks for perceived failures, blame for their capture, he never struck back, never reported them, never wavered in his duty. He absorbed the pain in silence, believing a leader shields his people even from their own anger. Then came the commandant's order. Jewish prisoners stepped forward for special handling. Edmonds knew the fate awaiting them: camps, execution, erasure. With only about 30 to 40 Jewish men among his 75 to 80 Americans, he could have complied quietly. Instead, he marched every single one outside and lined them up as one. When the pistol pressed to his forehead, when the threat of immediate death loomed, Edmonds looked the German officer in the eye and said, "We are all Jews here." He repeated it calmly, invoking the Geneva Convention's demand for equal treatment. No man stepped forward. No one was taken. The commandant backed down. The order dissolved for that group. All 75 to 80 survived captivity and returned home after liberation. The power of that moment lies in its quiet defiance. Edmonds had no weapon, no escape, only conviction and the unity he had forged despite resentment through unrelenting care. Leadership, he showed, is not popularity or force. It is sacrifice for every soul entrusted to you. He risked his life for men who had hurt him, refusing to let hatred or fear divide them. Edmonds spoke little of it after the war. He lived quietly in Tennessee until 1985. His son Chris uncovered the full story years later from survivors. In 2015, Roddy Edmonds received the Medal of Honor, posthumously, the first American soldier of World War II, honored for saving fellow Poles from the Holocaust. The act reminds us that in the darkest places, cold barracks, under a pistol's shadow, humanity can still prevail when one person refuses to yield. It was not victory through battle, but through unbreakable moral resolve, one man's choice, that preserved 75 to 80 lives and left a legacy of quiet, unbreakable decency. Like if Roddy Edmonds' story moved you. Comment your thoughts, what hits hardest about his stand. Subscribe for more forgotten World War II stories of courage and humanity. We have written the sources from which we got this story in the description of this video. And we have always been and will be supporters of the oppressed, regardless of their color, race, or country. This world and its creator are also with the oppressed. See you in the next W2 story.